Hey Reddit, brace yourselves for a story that's gonna hit you like a freight train. Imagine this. Two brothers, thick as thieves, building a family business from the ground up, dreaming of making it big together. Only for it all to come crashing down in a betrayal so brutal, it tore our family apart. I'm one of those brothers, and what started as a shared vision turned into a nightmare of greed, lies, and heartbreak that I never saw coming. Trust me, you're not gonna believe how this unfolded, and the ending? It's gonna leave you floored. Hit play on this video, because you've got to hear the whole messy, emotional ride of how our family business destroyed the bond one thought was unbreakable. I'm just a regular guy in my late 30s, hailing from a small industrial town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and the biggest excitement is the annual county fair. Growing up, it was always me and my younger brother against the world. I'm 2 years older, and from the time we were kids, we were inseparable. Picture us as scrappy little troublemakers, building forts out of couch cushions, sneaking cookies from the jar when mom wasn't looking, and dreaming up big plans for the future while lying in the grass under a starry sky. Our parents weren't rich by any stretch. Dad worked long shifts at a steel mill, and mom juggled part-time jobs as a waitress and a seamstress to keep us fed. But they instilled in us a grit, a belief that if you worked hard enough, you could make something of yourself. That's where the idea of a family business first took root in my mind, even if I didn't know it back then. Our childhood wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, though. Money was tight, and I remember the stress etched into Dad's face when bills piled up, the way mom would quietly cry at the kitchen table when she thought we were asleep. I'd lie in bed, listening to the muffled sounds through the thin walls of our tiny house, vowing that one day, I'd build something better for us all. My brother looked up to me, always tagging along, mimicking my every move, and I felt this deep responsibility to protect him, to be the big brother he could rely on. We'd talk about escaping the grind, about being our own bosses someday, free from the weight of punching a clock for someone else. Those late-night whispers in our shared bedroom, with only a flickering streetlight outside for company, planted the seeds of a dream that would eventually consume us both. Fast forward to our 20s, and after years of odd jobs, me working construction and him bouncing between retail gigs, we finally had a shot at making that dream real. I'd saved up every penny I could, living in a cramped apartment with leaky pipes and eating ramen more nights than I care to admit. My brother had done the same, scraping by and stashing away whatever he didn't spend on rent. We pooled our savings, a modest but hard-earned nest egg, and decided to start a small landscaping business. It wasn't glamorous, but it was something we could build together. We called it our own little empire, a nod to those childhood fantasies of striking it big. I handled the heavy lifting, designing layouts, meeting with clients, hauling equipment, while he took on the books, marketing, and scheduling. We were a team, perfectly balanced, or so I thought. We rented a beat-up old truck, bought secondhand mowers and tools off Craigslist, and started knocking on doors in our town, offering lawn care and basic yard work at dirt cheap rates just to get our foot in the door. The early days were brutal. I'd wake up before dawn, my back already aching from the previous day's labor, and drag myself out to load the truck under the dim glow of a street lamp. We'd work 12, sometimes 14-hour days, sweating through the humid Ohio summers, getting sunburned and blistered, but we didn't care. Every new client felt like a victory. Every dollar earned a step closer to something bigger. I'd collapse into bed at night, too exhausted to even shower sometimes, but with this quiet pride burning in my chest. We were doing it, really doing it. My brother and I would high-five after landing a big job, like when we scored a contract with a local church to maintain their sprawling grounds. Those moments made the grind worth it. I'd look at him, his face smeared with dirt just like mine, and feel this unbreakable bond, this shared purpose. We were building a legacy, something our parents could be proud of, something to pass down one day. Within a couple of years, the business started to take off. Word of mouth spread like wildfire in our small town, and soon we were getting calls from neighboring counties. We upgraded our equipment, hired a few part-time guys to help with the workload, and even rented a tiny office space in a strip mall to make things feel official. I remember the day we hung up our sign outside, a cheap vinyl banner with our logo, a simple tree silhouette that we designed ourselves on some free software. Standing there on the cracked pavement, staring at that sign, I felt like we'd made it, like all those years of struggle were finally paying off. My heart swelled with this mix of relief and ambition. We weren't just surviving anymore, we were growing. I drive past that sign every morning on my way to a job, and it never failed to make me smile, a tangible reminder of what we'd built from nothing. But as the business grew, so did the pressure. What started as a scrappy little operation turned into something that demanded more time, more money, more decisions. I was out in the field most days, managing crews, dealing with clients who changed their minds every other minute, and troubleshooting equipment breakdowns that seemed to happen at the worst possible times. My brother, meanwhile, stayed in the office more, handling payroll, invoices, and trying to drum up new business through local ads and social media. I didn't mind the split, it played to our strengths. But I started to notice little things, how he'd be on his phone a lot when I'd pop into the office, how he seemed distracted when I tried to talk strategy after a long day. I brushed it off as stress. Running a business isn't easy, and I figured we were both feeling the weight of it. I'd lie awake some nights, my mind racing with to-do lists and worries about cash flow, but I told myself it was normal, just part of the game. Then came the first real crack in our foundation, subtle at first, like a hairline fracture you don't notice until it's too late. I started seeing discrepancies in our finances, small stuff at first, expenses that didn't add up, receipts for things I didn't remember buying. I'm no accountant, but I'd always trusted my brother to keep the books clean. When I'd ask about it casually, figuring it was just a mix-up, he'd wave it off, saying he'd look into it, or that it was a clerical error. I wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that the guy I'd shared everything with since we were kids wouldn't hide anything from me. But the doubts started creeping in, gnawing at the edges of my mind like termites in old wood. I'd sit in my truck after a job, staring at the dashboard, trying to shake the feeling that something was off, telling myself I was overreacting. After all, this was my brother, my partner, my family. As months passed, those doubts grew into a quiet dread I couldn't ignore. I started digging deeper, going through bank statements and invoices late at night in my apartment, the glow of my laptop screen the only light in the room. My stomach churned as I found more inconsistencies, payments to vendors I'd never heard of, withdrawals that didn't match any equipment or supply purchases. My hands trembled as I pieced it together, the numbers painting a picture I didn't want to see. It looked like money was being siphoned off, little by little, in a way that was hard to catch unless you were looking for it. I felt sick, my heart pounding in my chest as I sat there in the dark, the weight of betrayal settling over me like a suffocating fog. How could this be happening? How could the person I trusted most in the world do this to me, to us? I didn't want to believe it. Didn't want to face the possibility that my own brother was stealing from the business we'd poured our blood, sweat, and tears into. I spent days wrestling with it, pacing my tiny living room, my mind a storm of anger and disbelief. I'd built this company with him, sacrificed everything for it. Late nights, missed holidays, relationships that fell apart because I didn't have time to nurture them. And now, to think he was undermining it all, it felt like a knife to the gut, a pain so sharp I could barely breathe. I'd stare at old photos of us on my phone, grinning at a job site, arms slung around each other's shoulders, and feel this ache in my chest, a longing for the days when things were simple, when I didn't question his loyalty. The tension between us started to build, even if I hadn't confronted him yet. I couldn't look at him the same way, couldn't hide the suspicion in my eyes when we'd cross paths at the office. I'd catch myself watching him more closely, noticing how he'd avoid certain topics, how he'd change the subject when I brought up finances. The air between us felt charged, like a storm waiting to break, and I hated it. I hated how this business, the thing that was supposed to bring us closer, was driving a wedge between us. I'd drive home after long days, the radio off, lost in my thoughts, wondering how we'd gotten here. I missed the brother I used to know, the kid who'd follow me everywhere, who'd laugh at my dumb jokes, who'd dream with me about a future we'd build side by side. Then came the moment I couldn't avoid any longer, the point of no return that shattered everything. I'd hired an independent accountant to go over our books, something I'd kept to myself because I didn't want to believe what I'd find. When the report came back, it was worse than I'd feared. Thousands of dollars had been funneled out over the past year, redirected into accounts I didn't have access to, hidden under fake expenses and inflated invoices. My hands shook as I read through the details, each line a fresh wound, proof of a betrayal I couldn't deny anymore. I sat at my kitchen table, the report spread out in front of me, feeling like the ground had dropped out from under me. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust, about family, about the bond one thought nothing could break. I felt this raw, burning anger, mixed with a sadness so deep it hollowed me out. How could he do this? How could he look me in the eye every day, knowing he was stealing from our dream? I didn't sleep that night, my mind racing with what to do next. Part of me wanted to storm into the office, to demand answers, to let all the hurt and rage pour out. But another part of me, the part that still loved my brother despite everything, wanted to believe there was an explanation, some misunderstanding I hadn't seen. I tossed and turned, the weight of it all pressing down on me, until the first light of dawn crept through my window. I knew I had to face it, had to confront the truth, no matter how much it hurt. So I made the decision to meet with him, to lay it all out and see what he'd say. I didn't know if I was ready for the fallout, but I couldn't keep living with this secret eating me alive. When the confrontation happened, it was like a dam breaking inside me. I'd set up a time to meet at the office after hours, when no one else would be around to witness the wreckage. Walking in, my heart was in my throat, my palms sweaty as I clutched the accountant's report like a weapon. I didn't want to do this, didn't want to tear apart what was left of us, but I had no choice. The look on his face when I showed him the evidence told me everything I needed to know before a word was even said. I saw guilt, fear, and something else, defiance, maybe, or shame. It broke me, seeing that, knowing there was no going back. I laid out the facts, my voice steady even as my insides churned, and watched as the brother I'd once known crumbled before my eyes. There were no excuses that could fix this, No apologies deep enough to mend what he'd broken. The aftermath was a blur of pain and logistics. I couldn't work with him anymore, couldn't trust him to be part of the business we'd built. I made the decision to buy him out, using every bit of savings I had left and taking on debt I wasn't sure I could handle. It was a gut punch, watching him walk away from something we'd created together, knowing that our relationship might never recover. I felt this crushing loneliness, like I'd lost not just a partner, but a piece of myself. The office felt emptier without him, the sign outside a bitter reminder of a dream that had soured. I'd sit there late at night, staring at the empty desk where he used to work, feeling the weight of his absence like a physical ache. I'd lost my brother, not to some tragic accident, but to greed, to choices I couldn't understand. Rebuilding the business on my own was a battle I wasn't sure I could win. I was drowning in debt, working longer hours than ever to keep things afloat, and dealing with clients who'd heard whispers of our split and started to doubt our reliability. Every day felt like a fight, my body and mind exhausted as I tried to hold it together. I'd wake up some mornings, staring at the ceiling, wondering if it was worth it, if I should just walk away and start over somewhere else. But I couldn't let go of what I'd built, couldn't let his betrayal be the end of my story. I pushed forward, hiring new staff, streamlining operations, and slowly clawing my way back from the brink. There were nights I'd collapse into bed, too tired to even eat, but with a flicker of pride that I was still standing, still fighting. The emotional toll was the hardest part. I'd see reminders of him everywhere, in the tools we'd bought together, in the routes we used to drive, in the old photos I couldn't bring myself to delete from my phone. I missed him, missed the way things used to be, even as I hated what he'd done. I'd drive past our childhood home sometimes, now sold to another family, and feel this pang of nostalgia for a time when we were just two kids with big dreams. I wondered if he felt the same, if he regretted his choices, if he ever thought about reaching out. But I couldn't bring myself to make the first move, couldn't open that door again after the pain he'd caused. I felt torn between anger and longing, a war inside me that I didn't know how to resolve. Years passed, and I started to find a new normal. The business stabilized, even grew, as I landed bigger contracts and expanded into new services like hardscaping and snow removal. I built a small but loyal team, people I could trust, though I'd be lying if I said I didn't struggle to let my guard down after everything. I moved into a better apartment, started taking care of myself again, hitting the gym, eating something other than takeout, even going on a few dates though my heart wasn't fully in it. I thought I was healing, thought I'd put the past behind me, even if the scar of losing my brother never fully faded. I'd still have moments of weakness, late at night when the world was quiet, where I'd wonder what he was doing, if he was okay, if he ever thought about me. But here's where the story takes a turn you won't see coming, a twist that flipped my world upside down all over again. One day, out of the blue, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten, with no return address. My hands shook as I opened it. Recognizing the scrawl immediately, it was his. I sat at my kitchen table, the letter trembling in my grip, as I read words I never expected to see. He wrote about how he'd hit rock bottom after we parted ways, how he'd lost everything trying to chase quick money and shady ventures, how he'd spent years wrestling with the guilt of what he'd done to me, to us. He wasn't asking for forgiveness, wasn't asking to come back into my life. He just wanted me to know he was sorry, that he'd never stopped regretting it, that he'd give anything to go back and make different choices. He mentioned he'd been in therapy, trying to understand why he'd sabotaged the best thing in his life, and that he was working a low-paying job now, trying to rebuild from scratch. Reading that letter, I felt a storm of emotions I couldn't name. Anger flared up first, the old wounds reopening as I remembered the betrayal, the nights I'd spent wondering how I'd survive the mess he'd left behind. But there was something else too, a sadness, a pity, maybe even a flicker of the love I'd once had for him. I sat there for hours, rereading those words, my coffee growing cold on the table, trying to figure out what I felt. I didn't know if I could ever trust him again, didn't know if I wanted him back in my life, but I couldn't deny that part of me missed him, missed the brother I'd grown up with, the one who'd been my best friend before everything went wrong. I tucked the letter into a drawer, not ready to decide, but unable to throw it away. Now, here's the ending that's going to blow your mind. The part one still can't quite believe myself. A few months after getting that letter, I was at a local hardware store, picking up supplies for a big job, when I saw him. He was at the other end of the aisle, looking thinner, grayer, like life had worn him down in ways I couldn't imagine. My heart stopped, my breath catching in my throat, as our eyes met for the first time in years. I saw a flash of recognition, of pain, of something that looked like hope, and for a moment, I didn't know what to do. I could have turned away, could have pretended I didn't see him, but something rooted me to the spot. I took a step forward, then another, my mind racing with everything I'd felt since the day it all fell apart. And in that moment, I made a choice, not to forgive, not yet, but to acknowledge him, to nod, to let him know I'd seen his letter, that I was still here. I don't know what the future holds, don't know if we'll ever rebuild what we lost. But as I walked out of that store, the weight of the past felt just a little lighter, like I'd taken the first step towards something. Maybe healing, maybe closure, Maybe something I can't name yet. I drove home, the sun setting over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and for the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope. Not the naive kind I had as a kid, dreaming of empires with my brother, but a quieter, more cautious kind. A hope that maybe, just maybe, broken things could be mended, even if they'd never look the same again. I gripped the steering wheel, the familiar hum of my truck's engine grounding me, and let myself imagine a future where we could at least talk, where the silence between us wasn't so heavy. That night, I sat at my kitchen table again, the letter pulled out from the drawer where I'd hidden it. I read it one more time, tracing the shaky handwriting with my finger, feeling the weight of his words settle into me differently now. Seeing him in person, even for just a moment, had made him real again, not just a ghost from my past or a source of pain, but a person, flawed and struggling, just like me. I didn't write back right away. I wasn't ready to dive into whatever this could become, but I didn't put the letter away either. I left it out on the table, a small, tangible reminder that the door wasn't completely shut. Over the next few weeks, I found myself thinking about him more, not with the sharp sting of betrayal, but with a kind of weary curiosity. What was his life like now? Had he really changed? Or was this just another fleeting moment of remorse before he slipped back into old patterns? I wrestled with those questions, turning them over in my mind during long drives between job sites or late at night when sleep wouldn't come. I started noticing little things too, how I'd smile at memories of us as kids before catching myself, how I'd wonder what he'd think of the new projects I'd taken on with the business. It was confusing, this mix of lingering hurt and unexpected softness, but I let myself feel it, let myself sit with the uncertainty instead of pushing it away. I also started talking about it, something I hadn't done in years. I confided in a close friend, one of the guys who'd stuck by me through the worst of the fallout, over beers at a quiet bar on the edge of town. I told him about the letter, about seeing my brother at the hardware store, about the tangle of emotions I couldn't quite unravel. He listened, nodding slowly, and then said something that stuck with me. You don't have to forgive him to move forward, man. Sometimes just letting go of the hate is enough to start healing. His words hit me hard, echoing in my head as I drove home that night under a starlit sky, the same kind my brother and I used to stare at as kids. I wasn't sure if I could let go of the hurt, but I wanted to try, wanted to see if there was a way to reclaim some piece of what we'd lost, even if it was just a sliver. Then, about a month after that chance encounter, I made a decision. I didn't tell anyone, didn't overthink it. I just acted on instinct, something I hadn't done in a long time when it came to him. I wrote a short note, nothing fancy, just a few lines on a piece of notebook paper. I told him I'd gotten his letter, that I'd seen him at the store, that I wasn't sure what this meant yet, but I was open to talking if he was. I didn't promise anything, didn't say I forgave him or that things could go back to how they were. I just left the door cracked open, a small gesture to see if he'd walk through it. I mailed it to the address I'd found through some old records, my heart pounding as I dropped it into the mailbox, the metal clanging shut like a finality I wasn't ready for. Days turned into weeks, and I didn't hear back. At first, I told myself it didn't matter, that I'd done my part, that I could live with whatever came next. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't check the mail every day, didn't feel a twinge of disappointment when there was nothing there. I threw myself into work, taking on more projects than I probably should have, trying to drown out the waiting with the familiar ache of physical labor. I'd come home exhausted, dirt under my nails, and still glance at the empty spot on my table where I'd left his letter, wondering if I'd made a mistake reaching out, if I'd opened myself up to more hurt. Then, one rainy afternoon, as I was sorting through a stack of bills and junk mail, I saw it. A plain envelope, his handwriting scrawled across the front. My breath caught, my hands unsteady as I tore it open, rain tapping against the window like a quiet drum roll. His response was short, just like mine had been, but it carried a weight I hadn't expected. He thanked me for writing, said he'd been afraid I'd never want to hear from him again, and asked if we could meet somewhere neutral, just to talk. No pressure, no expectations. He ended it with a line that hit me like a punch. I've missed you every day, even when I didn't deserve to. I sat there, the letter in my lap, rain streaking down the glass, feeling something shift inside me, a crack in the wall I'd built around my heart. I haven't decided yet if I'll meet him. I'm still carrying the scars of what happened, still wary of letting him back in, even for a conversation. But I'm thinking about it, turning the idea over in my mind like a stone smoothed by a river, feeling its edges, testing its weight. I've spent so long defined by the pain of his betrayal, by the loneliness of rebuilding without him, that I almost forgot what it felt like to hope for something better. Now, with this fragile thread of connection between us, I'm starting to remember. I'm starting to believe that maybe healing isn't about erasing the past, but about finding a way to live with it, to build something new on the ruins of what was. So, Reddit, that's my story. A messy, painful, unfinished journey of family, betrayal, and the tiniest spark of redemption. I don't know if my brother and I will ever be close again. Don't know if trust can be rebuilt after it's been shattered so completely. But I do know this. I'm not the same man I was when this all started. I've learned that even the deepest wounds can start to heal, that that even the darkest chapters don't have to be the end of the book. I fought to keep my business alive, fought to keep myself together, and now, maybe, I'm ready to fight for something else. A chance to reclaim a piece of the family I thought I'd lost forever. What would you do in my shoes? Would you take the risk of meeting him, of opening that door wider, or would you keep it shut to protect yourself? I'm torn, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, your stories, anything that might help me figure out the next step. Because right now, I'm standing at a crossroads, and for the first time in years, I feel like the path forward might just lead to something worth fighting for. Thanks for listening to my ramble, and I hope my story reminds you that even when everything falls apart, there's always a chance to start again.